Good everyone. I hope you guys have an amazing day. So today I'm going to briefly discuss the use of cloud computing in data analytics. Why cloud computing is very popular. There's going to be a very tiny episode today. So you know, I'm pretty sure everyone would have heard about cloud computing, right? Even Salesforce is in cloud. It's a software as a service, so it's hosted in the cloud, right? So you have Sales Cloud, you have Service Cloud, you have Marketing Cloud, right? You have Financial Service Cloud, Vaccine Cloud. Um, so different experience. Different cloud gives us different experience. It serves a different purpose, right? Um, when it comes to even you have Tableau, right? So when it comes to data analytics, right? If you you might I don't know if you were which generation you're from, but at least when I was younger, especially in 90s, people often talk a lot about mainframes, right? A lot of banking applications you're still written in mainframe, and a lot of data uh, processing used to happen using a mainframe. But mainframe, I don't know if you ever seen COBOL interface. I personally don't like it. It's yucky interface. And no offense to people who are passionate about COBOL, I personally would not like to work with COBOL. It just very interesting and very strange. So uh, back in the days, right, like in the 90s, if the companies used to uh, if companies want to use, or in early 2000, you can say companies want to play with big data to do data analysis, they obviously have to have their own data centers. They have to buy a lot of servers. So it's like an upfront cost which needs to be considered before getting into a big data or data analysis, right? So that's one of the reasons why most of the small companies never used to talk about any kind of data analytics. And there was not much positions if you've seen in the back in the days. At least when I started working in late 2000, I started seeing more data analytics positions, but especially when I was in uni or when I was in high school, I never heard anybody talking about data analysis. There was no talk about big data, even though I did learn some of the computer programming when I was in high school. But even no one talked about um, uh, any kind of big data. And the only companies who were doing big data was the big ones, right? Who could afford fancy, millions of worth of servers. So they were the only one who were actually considering big data, data analysis. But things got changed, right? Things got changed when the cloud computing got introduced. People kind of realized, hey, I don't have to spend millions of dollars upfront to buy a server. I could pretty much rent a virtual cloud or the virtual machine on the cloud. I can pretty much use a cloud computing resource. I can rent it, and I can process my data, and I can now hire data analytics. I don't have to spend millions of dollars to invest in server. Instead, I can look for someone who has a right skill set so they can work with the data since it's hosted in the cloud, right? And the data replication also used to happen quite often. uh, sorry, data replication used to happen when in the past, uh, especially with the big firms because they used to buy a lot of servers to do that. But now with the introduction of cloud computing, most businesses could afford to do that, right? It's pretty cheap. You don't really need to, like I say, you don't really need to have to pay for servers upfront. Instead, you can just pay when you need it, right? It just does a pay as you go model. Now, there are a lot of cloud players in the market, right? Salesforce is one of them. You can use, but that being said, right? Salesforce is not really known for the big data. It's a CRM system. But if you're really talking about the big data, Hadoop is one of the uh, open source platform, which Hadoop is an open source technology, right? Which is heavily used in the big data. So uh, Hadoop is one of them. But that being said, right, there are other sorry, Google Cloud does data analytics very efficiently. AWS does, Azure does, right? And you can do even machine learning using AWS and Azure. So If you go to the Amazon.com AWS, you can see the machine learning on A. And if you look for Azure, if you're not a fan of AWS, you can also do Azure, right? Or if you wanted to do big data on AWS, if you Google it, yeah, you can use the big data use case, right? What is big data? You can read about the big data, right? And you can actually work with the big data using AWS. The same goes with Azure. So as you can see, and you don't have to spend thousands and thousands of dollars for that. You can spend minimum amount of money, and you can get what you're really looking for, right? If I go back, I really like AWS, right? That's the first cloud I've actually learned. I mean, Salesforce. I was playing around with the Salesforce back in the days, the but the real cloud experience, right, in terms of computing resource, in terms of VPC, in terms of the database on the cloud, AWS gave me that experience, and I'm really a big fan of AWS, right? If you have to choose between Azure and AWS, obviously I'm a bit biased towards AWS. But that being said, Azure is a great uh, platform as well, right? You can do pretty much a lot of stuff with Azure. So, and I all fits there, right? You don't really have to, stick to the single tool. Is always, a tool is just a tool, right? As long as you know what business problem you're trying to solve. So, so you can see that, big data. You can say in Azure, sorry, AWS. You can do analytics on AWS, scalable data lakes. You got serverless stuff, machine learning integration. So yeah, a lot of things you can use. So these are the analytics service for AWS. If you look at it, Athena, EMR, Redshift, QuickSight, Glue Data Brew, Open Search Service, Amazon Managed Service for Apache Flink, S3, Deep Learning AMI, Amazon SageMaker. So as you can see, a lot of services being involved. And AWS has introduced a lot of services to help with the data analytics aspect of it. And yeah, it's a pretty amazing platform, right? If you're interested, please check it out, right? Because I do understand that when Salesforce talks about data analytics, you should look at other clouds to see how it does, right? And obviously, you can um, do, like I said, in Google Cloud. You can also do that in Azure. So let's look at Azure, right? If I look for big data Azure, so big data architecture style Azure, you can see you have this big data architecture style. You can read about how it does, and you have Azure Data Studio, Cloud Sale Analytics. Let's look at this one. Enterprise, right? You can transform any data into timely insight at enterprise scale. So have a look at it if this is something you're interested. Like I said, I'm not a big fan of Azure, but I mean I love AWS. That's my preference. And often I advise don't stick to the tool. Even if I have to work on Azure, I will work on Azure. There's no problem as long as I know using Azure I could solve a business problem, right? The same goes with AWS. The same goes with Google Cloud. Or same goes with Alibaba or IBM Cloud, right? It doesn't matter. These are just the tech stack. You can use whichever you want, as long as you know the business problem you're trying to solve and at the cheaper cost, right? Obviously, you shouldn't be recommending a solution which is way expensive when you have a cheaper and scalable product in place as a substitute. So yeah, that's pretty much I wanted to talk about it. So I do understand that there's not much to do hands-on, right? And yeah, I don't need your help. I'm not interested for now. Sorry, go away. So sorry about that. It's just AWS, or sorry, Azure stuff. Uh, so yeah, like I said, right, I don't really have much to talk about it because it's a very small topic. That's the reason why I mentioned in the start it's going to be a very small episode. All I wanted to talk about why cloud computing is important from a data analytics perspective. Um, I can't get into the nitty gritty details about AWS or Azure, right? That's going to take us ages. So um, And I have no plan to make any tutorial on Azure AWS. There are a lot of good videos out there. You can do that. However, in the future, I'm planning to do a new series, eventually on Microsoft Dynamics because it's a CRM stuff, and it makes logical sense, right? I'm already talking about Salesforce CRM. Some people might be interested in Microsoft Dynamics, so I'll love to do those stuff, right? So it happens in the future, not anytime sooner. So that being said, I hope you guys have an amazing Thursday. Adios.